Hey everybody, this is Dr. Chris Dost. Welcome back to my channel. So glad you're here and I really appreciate your support. In this video, we're going to be looking at Jonah chapter 1 and verse 4. Before we get started, however, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, click the bell to be notified when I publish future videos in this series. Click the like button, and if you would, share this video on social media, please, to help me spread the word about this channel. If you'd like to watch this video in its entirety and gain access to all of my videos, Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic, then go over to my Patreon channel. All right, thanks for your support, and let's get started. So, according to the Masoretic text, Jonah 1:4 says, "V'Adonai heitil ruach gedola el hayam, v'yehi sa'or gadol bayam, v'ha'oniya chishva lihishaver." All right, let's read it one time slowly now. V'Adonai heitil ruach gedola el hayam, v'yehi sa'or gadol bayam, v'ha'oniya chishva lihishaver. V'Adonai heitil ruach gedola el hayam, v'yehi sa'or gadol bayam, v'ha'oniya chishva lihishaver. So the first word is V'Adonai, and V'Adonai is Vav, the conjunction Vav, plus the tetragram, the tetragrammaton, which is the four-letter name for God, Yud, He, Vav, He. Now, as we've said before, the tetragram technically is God's name. In Hebrew, that would be Yahweh. That's the traditional pronunciation anyway. But out of respect for Jewish tradition, we typically pronounce it as Lord, and English Bibles show reverence for that tradition, and they write Lord in all caps. So this can mean and the Lord, but the Lord, now the Lord. It all depends on context. The best translation here, given the context, the previous three verses, would be, but the Lord, so it's showing contrast here, but the Lord heitil. Now the verb heitil is a third masculine singular suffix conjugation. Third masculine singular, so the he form. Suffix conjugation, functioning as a simple past, as we'll find out from the context, in the C stem, that is the causative stem, or what is traditionally known as the hifil, of the root tet, vav, lamed. So heitil, third masculine singular suffix conjugation, C stem, or hifil, of the root tet, vav, lamed, it means he threw or he hurled. So, but the Lord hurled ruach gedolah. So we have an attributive adjectival phrase here that is indefinite. Ruach is a feminine singular noun in this case. There are times where it shows up in the Hebrew Bible as a masculine noun. In this case, it's a feminine singular noun, and we know that how? Because of the adjective. Remember, nouns can lie to you or deceive you with regard to their gender. Adjectives never will. And so ruach, we know that it's feminine singular as opposed to masculine singular, not because of its own form, but because of the attributive adjective that's attached to it, gedolah, which is a feminine singular adjective. So now the Lord, or but the Lord hurled or threw a great wind, ruach gedolah. Now the Lord hurled a great wind, el hayam, to the sea, or at the sea, we might say. Typically, al with ayin would mean upon the sea. I know that some translations have upon the sea, but it seems that el means to or toward. So the Lord hurled a great wind toward the sea, el being the preposition, hayam being the masculine singular form yam with the definite article prefix to it. So hayam, right? And the definite article there has all of the features we would expect of a definite article in Hebrew, the he, the patach, and the dagesh in the following consonant, el hayam. So now the Lord hurled, or but the Lord hurled a great wind toward the sea, vayhi. Now vayhi can mean a whole bunch of things, and its translation needs to be derived from the context. All right, now let's take a minute to identify the cantillation marks. So working backwards from lihishaver, we see that we have the siluk there, the siluk. And that occurs at the end of almost every verse in the Hebrew Bible. It is the final disjunctive accent in most verses of the Hebrew Bible. Now, secondly, we expect most verses in the Hebrew Bible to be divided into two, and it is the atnach accent, the atnach disjunctive accent, which we see on bayam, that serves that purpose. And so bayam is the final word in the first half of Jonah 1:4, according to the Masoretes. Now, when we say the first half, we're not numbering the words. The Masoretes divide verses into unequal halves, typically unequal halves. We're going to find that there are generally more words in the first section or more words in the second section. They're generally not equal in word length. And so if we count the words here, we have Vadonai, Hetil, Ruach, Gdolah, El, Hayam, Vayhi, Sa'a, Gadol, Bayam. We have 10 words in the first half of this verse, and in the final half, or the second and final section of the verse, we only have V'haoniyah, Chishva, Lihishaver. 3 words. So the two quote-unquote halves are not equal in length. But that is how the Masoretes have divided the verse, and so when we're reading the text, we want to pay attention to these cantillation marks or these accent marks to help us understand how to break up the text. Now, in many verses in the Hebrew Bible, each half of the verse will be divided into 2 sections, generally unequal in length. And oftentimes, those divisions are going to be marked by the zakef katan, which looks like a shwa above the word. And so we see the first zakef katan on hayam, right above the yud. We see the second zakef katan above v'haoniyah. And so the major disjunctive accents in this verse are zakef katan over hayam, atnach beneath bayam, zakef katan over v'haoniyah, and siluk beneath lihishaver. Now, the way I've presented things in this video, properly speaking, are a little bit backwards because we should have looked at the cantillation marks before we ever read the text. But since most people are not experts in cantillation yet, I wanted to just get to the reading because that's what most people are here for. But once you understand the cantillation marks, it's better to glance at them first before you read the text because it will help you to see where the proper divisions are. And if you'll notice, if we read the text, Vadonai hetil ruach gedolah el hayam, zakef katan, we have to pause there. What does that mean again? Now the Lord hurled a great wind toward the sea. That is actually a sensible place for a disjunctive mark. In our English translations, in fact, we find punctuation there. The zakef katan is a good indicator of where we ought to pause. And then we get Vayhi Sa'a Gadol Bayam. There's our atnach. And what does that mean? And there was a great storm on the sea. Also a great place to pause or to put punctuation. And then we get V'haoniyah, zakef katan, chishva lihishaver, threatened to break up. Now here, the second half of the verse is just one clause. So we're not going to put punctuation in our English translation after V'haoniyah. But hopefully you see that generally when we have these disjunctive accents, it indicates that more often than not, we are supposed to pause, and oftentimes there will be punctuation required in our English translations. All right, now let's just have a quick look at the other cantillation marks, going right from the beginning. So above Vadonai, we have the revia, which is a disjunctive accent. Over the next word, hetil, we have the mapach or mehupach, which is a conjunctive accent, conjoining, bringing together. Now, there are over 2,000 occurrences of revia followed by mehupach in the Hebrew Bible. The first one is in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 7. We see it again in Genesis 1:11, Genesis 1:14, Genesis 3:3, and it just occurs all over the Hebrew Bible, as you can see from the samples that I'm showing you. Ruach has a metheg or a gaya, and then we have pashta on the word gedolah, which is a disjunctive accent. Now revia followed by mehupach followed by pashta occurs all over the place in the Hebrew Bible as well. We see it again, Genesis 1:7, on Vayavdel ben Hamayim. Thanks again for supporting my YouTube channel, and please be sure to check out my Patreon page where you can watch the unabridged video. See you next time, everybody.